Good evening. Welcome to the Monday, December 13th, Berlin Board of Education meeting. We are going to start this meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We have a wonderful way of starting our meeting this evening. We have the Berlin High School Madrigal Singers, so we will all get up and move to the front row.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for having us tonight. My name is Tyler Boyle. I'm the Director of Choral Music and Theater here at Berlin High School. And with me tonight are some of our Madrigal singers. We have a few students who are absent for this evening's performance in preparation for tomorrow evening's winter chorus concert. So I certainly invite all of you to our winter concert tomorrow night at 7 o'clock in the A Gym. We'll be joined by the Green and Gold 6th grade chorus from McGee, as well as the McGee Sound Express, and all of our choral ensembles from the high school. So if you are available tomorrow evening, I look forward to hopefully seeing you. We'll be performing two pieces tonight from our winter repertoire cycle. The first is O Magnum Mysterium, and the second one is Cantate Domino.
Cantate Domino, cantate, cantate, cantate Domino, canticum novum, lauseus in ecclesia sanctorum, in ecclesia
I know the students are not here anymore, but thank you. That was excellent. Does anyone else on the board have anything they'd like to add? Beautiful as usual. I love listening to them every year. Okay, great. Well, thank you. We will move to the report from the student representatives.
Last Friday, school-wide, we had PJ Day, so it was sponsored by the National Honor Society, and we raised around $800 at the high school alone, which will be donated to the Connecticut Children's Medical Center. Upbeat has a new coordinator, which is Sheil Patel, who is a former BHS graduate. And as Mr. Boyle mentioned, the Winter Choral Concert is tomorrow night, featuring the BHS Choral Ensemble as well as McGee's Choral Ensemble.
This week, the Medical Club will be selling wristbands to raise money for cancer research, and wristbands will be sold in both the B Gym and cafeteria, along with both entrances in the morning. 90% of the profit will be donated to the St. Jude's Children's Research Hospital. The Berlin High School musical production, Into the Woods, has started rehearsals, and opening night for the musical is March 3rd through March 6th.
That's it?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you for the update. We will move to committee assignments for 2021-2022. Community Engagement Committee, Tracy Sisti is the chair, Melissa Gibbons and myself are the members, and Superintendent Benigni is the administrative liaison. For Finance and Operations Committee, Tim Oakes is the chair, Adam Salina and Matt Tenza are the members, and Ashley Dorsey and Jeffrey Cugno are the administrative liaisons. The Curriculum Committee, Carrie Sassu is the chair, Jamie Miller and Gina Nappi are the members, and Dr. Mcgurk is the administrative liaison. The ad hoc committees for policy revision and review is made up of the committee chairs, and Tim Oak will be chairing that. And Superintendent Benigni is the administrative liaison. And the Equity and Social Justice Advisory Committee, Melissa Gibbons and Gina Nappi are the two board members that will attend and report back, and Dr. Mcgurk is the administrative liaison. So those are the committee assignments for the 2021-2022 year. We will now move to committee reports. I believe the F&O committee met last week. Do you have anything to report?
Yes, we did, and I do. We met on the 9th, last Thursday. We discussed the transportation contract with New Britain Transportation. We'll be going into more detail on that later this evening. And we also started to discuss some topics of the budget. In particular, we focused on the capital expenditure items. Again, more detail on that in January as we get into budget meetings and presentations. But one area of concern that came out of that, I think, from all of us on the committee, is that we've been provided guidance from the town that many of the capital items have fallen into a funding category of surplus. And this is basically looking at the leftover monies at the end of year of our budget to fund these items. Currently, there's about $1.8 million in that category, and I know we've never had a surplus in typical years that is that high. So at this point, as a committee, we've got some concerns about some of those areas. I know Mr. Cugno is going to be talking with the town and the Board of Finance about some of those items and trying to fight and advocate for the importance of some of them, such as the lavatories at the elementary schools, and making sure that everybody understands the severity and the importance of some of these projects. So that's it for now.
Thank you. Thank you for the update. I will move to Tracy. I know you just had a community engagement meeting.
Yes, we just met before this meeting, and it was just kind of an introduction to figure out other ways that we can reach out and kind of fine-tune what we're already doing. So we're going to be looking at our Facebook, kind of making it a little bit more present and using it to take over what the citizen is no longer doing for us, like possibly doing some articles. We're going to be looking into QR codes, possibly looking into the radio station and utilizing it here at Berlin High. So there's a lot of things in the works that we're going to be coming back to and trying to get out to the community a little bit more.
Thank you. And the curriculum?
Yes, the curriculum committee met just prior to this board meeting tonight, and the assistant superintendent, Dr. Mcgurk, and BHS principal, Mrs. Eustace, shared with us data associated with student achievement throughout the district. That included the smarter balanced assessments for the younger grades 3 through 8, NGSS, SAT, and advanced placement testing results, but there will be a presentation by both of them later in the meeting, so they will cover that much more comprehensively.
Thank you. Correspondence to the board?
Yes, I have one correspondence to the board. To the Board of Education, thank you for the generous gift and the Barnes & Noble card. I hope to have some time over the upcoming break to sit down with a real good book. Thank you also for honoring me at the BOE meeting. It meant a lot for me that my daughters could see me recognized. Thank you for all your support these past 15 years. Sincerely, Patty Pyrus.
Thank you. All right, we will move to the next part of our agenda, the audience of citizens. So members of the Berlin community are encouraged to come share their thoughts. You will be given a 2-minute limit, and the Board of Education will not engage in back and forth conversation. We may get back to you separately, but if anyone would like to go to the mic and share anything with the Board of Education. So if you just go on up and then just state your name and address.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Alan Verastro. I live on 535 Lower Lane. Excuse me. This is first meeting. I just have 2 young children entering into the school system. So want to be engaged in my children's future and everything. So I thought it was a good idea to come here and start kind of get myself familiar with the proceedings and what's going on in the schools. Something that does concern me that I've heard amongst the different categories here is the conversation of equity, and it's a very controversial issue these days. I'd like to just ask a few questions. Obviously, I understand I'm not going to have a response, but hopefully in the future have some answers to these questions and hopefully some consideration and forethought on the Board of Ed's part. So, I mean, first off, I'm not sure why we even want to consider such a controversial topic in this environment right now, simply because, I mean, I think it stands to reason you could watch news and see there's a lot of discourse on it, a lot of divide on this topic. Just the words alone, the word alone, equity, is kind of against everything that our Constitution is about, the American way, when we've done everything about equality. And remembering Martin Luther King's words, I dream of a day where all, I'm paraphrasing of course, will be judged by the content of the character, not by the color of their skin, or other physical features and characteristics, obviously, or ideologies. Because it doesn't change, our ideologies don't change whether or not we're a productive member of society and overall a good human being. So some of the questions, other than why are we even considering such a controversial topic at this time or subject, I would hope that we would look at what measures, is that the 2 minutes? Did I already go 2 minutes? What measures will you be taking to prevent the ideological teachings from overshadowing the academic teachings? I've been informed of a web page called equitableMath.org, a website or organization. Hopefully we would consider not using this organization, as math has always been a universal language, and to muddy the waters of math with something of a social topic, which I think the topic itself of equity and equality really is a social and ethics question. And I think it does belong in the education system to have these discussions. Everybody should have some philosophical engagement in this. I just feel there's a time and a place. That's pretty much it.
Thank you. I appreciate you addressing the board. If you stay for the rest of the meeting, you'll hear the report on the committee, and members of the community are encouraged to join. So regardless of where you stand, I would encourage that, because that's where you're going to have the greatest impact and learn the most. But we can also talk more after the meeting if you would like, and you could always email me, call me. My cell phone number's on the Board of Ed webpage.
No, that's kind of what I'm looking for, just to be able to stay involved, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Thank you so much for addressing the board.
Thank you.
Go ahead. State your name and address.
Mary Catherine LaRose, 26 Woodruff Lane, Kensington. My only comment is regarding the 2-minute limit to audience of citizen speakers. I don't know when you started doing that. I think it's very intimidating to people, and I don't know, unless there's a huge crowd here, why you would need to limit it to 2 minutes. And also just having it on the screen, I think it's very intimidating. It's not very user-friendly. I'm used to talking all the time, but not everyone is. So I would just ask you maybe to consider eliminating that. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate that. We do have a board retreat coming up, and that is something we can discuss at our Board of Education retreat. Anyone else like to address the Board of Education this evening? Right, well, thank you. Thank you for coming out. We're moving on to the next part of our agenda, the consent agenda. Do we have a motion for consideration?
Julia, if I may, before
Oh, yes.
we get to that, I first would like to move to add an item C to the consent agenda, a request for an unpaid leave of absence for a math specialist at Hubbard School.
I'll second the motion.
So we have a motion by Tim, second by Adam. Any discussion?
Just that there are details in Schoology for anyone who was not familiar.
Okay, thank you. Any other discussion on adding that item? Okay. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? 9-0. Okay.
That being said, I move to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Do we have a second? So a motion by Tim, second by Carrie. Any discussion on the consent agenda? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay, the vote carries 9-0. Moving on to the facilities-related update. Mr. Cugno, do you have a report for the board?
Good evening, folks. I have a couple of quick comments here, information for the board. On December 1, we made an application to the Marjorie Moore Fund grant associated with the Marjorie Moore Fund, and we sent a grant application in there, and it's for a outdoor classroom at McGee. Some of the people that are on the committee, and I'll talk a little bit about it, but Pam Hammond, who's one of our teachers, was the lead on the committee. It was her idea. It was part of something that she was trying to develop, and asked the Board of Ed, or asked the administration if we could assist her. We ended up with a committee of Pam Hammond, Linda Holian, Sal Urso, Ashley Dorsey, Alan Cum from Allen Landscaping helping us out, and myself. What the idea was is to come out with an outdoor classroom at McGee for the BLAST students. We have some good area at McGee that we can do some outdoor things on the site. If you're looking at the building, you look to the left, we got a nice lawn out there and a flat area. And so generally speaking, we're talking about a patio, one that can be used by all the children, but mostly the BLAST students for classes and things like that. Obviously very accessible. The design looks very good. It's a patio and a pavilion to keep them out of the sun and make it for it's usable for most of the year. The preliminary budget that was put together by Allen Landscaping is about $70,000. We don't know exactly how much money is going to be available from the Marjorie Moore Fund, but that's the project amount. We will see what happens. So we made the application on December 1st. I think the committee did a very, very nice job in at least discussing the issues and seeing what they could do. So we look forward to that. I don't have the actual date that the Marjorie Moore Fund makes a decision, but I think it would be a very, very nice project. And even if they do not give us the amount of money that is necessary to do it, we can obviously build upon it and do phases out there on the lawn. So it's kind of nice. That's really the only thing I have to do with facilities. I do have a couple pieces of information for the board. We do have a new head custodian at McGee. We did some interviews about 2 or 3 weeks ago and came out with a very good person, we believe. He started today. His name is Jim McCabe. He has about 20 years experience in custodian and running a few things in the medical field and also down in Old Lyme in their middle school. So we're very excited about that. And the last thing is we are interviewing, excuse me, we are interviewing for our for the guard, for the security. We are short one guard. We've started interviews. We have 2 finalists left. Hopefully within the next, excuse my voice, hopefully in the next, I would hope in the next week we'd be hiring someone there. So those are the new employees from the standpoint of, custodians and guards. Any questions I can try to answer?
I have a quick, go ahead, Adam.
Jeff, with regard to the outdoor classroom, what does it entail besides, is it just all landscaping to create it, or is there?
It's going to be, the way it is set up now, and at least the cost estimation and the stuff that Alan did for it, there's going to be concrete pad, okay, with a walkway from the front where the parking lot is at McGee. So the kids come out of, the blast classroom is right in that area. So they come out of 2 doors. But basically we wanted to make sure that it had, a good pathway there. So it's concrete all the way out the far left door. If you're looking at the building, you walk to the front and then you have at least the way it's designed now, you have a concrete sidewalk going to a fairly large pad, 20 by 20. There'll obviously be landscaping around that pad and everything of that nature, but I mean, it'll be a sturdy situation. And then it's a prefabricated pavilion that goes all over it. So it's great. I mean, it could be used for a lot of things. And what the idea is also is to build off of that, because you've got more land there. So you can have other areas that come off of that for different uses, different settings, different things that the kids could enjoy themselves and come out and use. And of course, it's going to be there constantly. So it's not just for the blast classroom. Any students that want to go out there and use that nice space will be able to use it. Oh, you want to go ahead?
There'll be seating area, so there'll be adaptive tables and chairs. We want to put some type of adaptive swings for the students so they can get the sensory input that they need. It's a place to have lunch out there with typical peers. It's a place to learn leisure skills. It's wide open to what we can do.
Have you seen other districts do something similar, or is this unique?
As far as I know, it's unique. I'm sure there are other things, other spaces out there, but I haven't seen anything yet.
Great, thank you.
I have a question about the application that was submitted for the funding. I'm not sure if you want to speak to that, or Jeff?
Pam Hammond actually was doing a graduate course. Okay. So as part of her coursework, she reached out to a number of us and said, is there anything that you really want to do? And I jumped all over it because I've been talking about this blast outdoor space probably for 4 or 5 years. So Pam started it just because her classwork was done and over with last year, but she continued it. So that's how we initiated it, because it was part of her coursework to do some big project with a grant involved.
Okay, that's great. Actually, when I was doing one of my graduate courses, I had the same project, and it was a really great learning opportunity. Do you know about how much they'll fund up to? Who's the grant through?
Who's it through?
Marjorie Moore?
Marjorie Moore.
Okay.
It's in Berlin.
Right. And
we've applied to it, Julia, a number of times, but it was on a smaller scale.
Okay.
When we, I think, started the Transition Academy, they probably gave us like $2,000 for a refrigerator and things like that. Pam did try to do some more detailed research to see what's the largest amount, and think it came up to like 35, 40, but it was hard to find out that information.
Okay. I was just curious. Yes.
So Linda, as it's designed currently, is there anything about the space that would preclude any student with a certain disability from accessing it? So it sounds like from the way Jeff described it, it would be wheelchair accessible.
Absolutely.
There are some sensory pieces too. What about from the standpoint of safety? So if a student tends to elope, as we like to use, the term we like to use in schools, is there something that would keep them from so doing? You know, I don't know where it's located with relationship to the parking lot or from other aspects of the building.
So the BLAS classroom is right in, when you come in that parking lot, it's to the left of the main entrance. And we can set it back a little bit and we'll have the landscaping, but Carrie, there's lots of adult support there as well. So that's why we needed to make sure the pad was big enough, because it's not just for the students itself, it's also to accommodate the number of adults that are part of that program because of safety concerns.
Yeah, I'm just thinking.
Yeah, but
I'm trying to be forward thinking, because I know you said you tried to look for the maximum amount of financial support. So I'm wondering if anything was left out of the plan that could potentially be added in the future, where additional financial support to be secured.
yeah, and we just want to continue to grow it, you know, as this is the basics, and then what else can we add, especially for those leisure opportunities for the students. But that was a big thing about, because we have students in walkers, we have students in wheelchairs, so you need that even space so the students can access it safely.
I would also encourage you to take a look at the Community Foundation of Greater New Britain. If
Jack
there's,
Rudy actually told me about that one as
Okay.
well, so that's something that we'll.
so if Marjorie Moore doesn't come through with the full amount, perhaps the Community Foundation could come chip in as well.
Realize, as I mentioned, this is the Board of Ed application. So if it does get funded or considered, there'll be some conversations. There will also be designs. There will also be things that will come in front of the board. This is one of our schools, so naturally you have to approve what gets done there. So I just wanted to get on your plate the fact that we had made the application and we may be having some fun going forward, but there's a lot of ideas about raising fund, giving the, going out and buying the bricks and so on and so forth, if you want a pathway and so on and so forth. So, but it should be a very, very nice project. We're hoping to get a little bit of money from Marjorie Moore.
And they also, we do have some more funding sources with the, due to the whole pandemic. So there was another ESSER just for special ed and another recovery one that I did put construction costs in there, with this being part of it, stuff at the Transition Academy. So we do have some funds set aside for that as well.
Any other questions? No other questions? Well, thank you. I look forward to hearing the status. We are going to turn it over to the Assistant Superintendent, Dr. Mcgurk, to present the Berlin High School Program of Studies for 2022-2023.
So Mrs. Eustace, is, the high school principal, will also be presenting. Yes. So just to let people who may be unfamiliar with this process get a little bit of background, the changes that are being proposed now for the upcoming program of studies have been through the Board of Ed Curriculum Committee starting this year in October, and the members of that committee have had a chance to review and discuss each of these proposals in some detail. The high school program of studies changes every year as a result of our desire to continuously improve the program, and Mrs. Eustace and her staff have been working on the potential changes to the program of studies virtually since the time that you approved changes last year. This is an ongoing process throughout the year for us to look at our programming and the course offerings and to make sure that we're developing a robust program at Berlin High School.
So we're referencing, you should all have an electronic this way you don't have to turn around, but this is you have an electronic copy in front of you, and hard copies were in the doorway as you entered. So good evening, everybody. This is always a fun project. So I would like to, as Dr. Mcgurk mentioned, we did discuss the proposed changes with the curriculum committee last month, and even prior to that, some of the changes that we've been thinking about are the work leading up to some of the proposed changes that we are putting forth for this year. So if we take a look past the title page on page 1, we are looking at updating our policy related to credit extension and enrichment. If you look at, there's some language that's italicized in number 2, 3, and 5. And basically, it's just the opportunity to extend opportunities for enrichment as necessary for students if they are looking to take coursework outside of Berlin High School. So in number 2, it talks about you may request to enroll in 2 courses each semester. We actually have some articulation and articulation agreements and partnerships with surrounding colleges and universities that allow our students to take courses at no charge. In number 3, it just expands the notion of summer school programming. It's not just West Hartford, but other appropriate approved high school summer programs could count for credit as well as appropriate. And then finally, number 5 is the caveat of under extraordinary circumstances, the high school principal may exempt students from the requirement of carrying 7 credits. So sometimes what we do is, if a student is looking for an enrichment opportunity, oftentimes we say you have to carry 7 credits during the school day and then do this on top, which actually really sometimes creates some roadblocks for students. So we want to make sure that there's some flexibility as appropriate in order for students to pursue outside opportunities as necessary and needed. The next thing is just an update in terms of internship and work-based learning experiences. We have been working with a consultant for almost a year now in terms of helping us build out work-based learning experiences and beyond the classroom experiences and looking at internships. And one of the things that we have learned based on being out there interviewing and looking at a variety of programs is that the notion of offering an internship where you're going to go to a site for 100 hours, it's not necessarily really always feasible, particularly with high school students. There's age restrictions, it's very restricted what they can do. And really the notion behind an internship is to have an opportunity to explore a potential career pathway. So in working with our consultant, our consultant actually advised do away with that crazy, that exorbitant number of hours at a particular site, and more the opportunity of building out an internship or a work-based learning experience program, which could include a variety of job shadows, maybe doing 10 hours at a variety of different places, interviewing people in various fields, and perhaps even bringing speakers in, or attending if we have tech or trade school or other representatives coming into the school and making sure that they're going and attending. Making sure that they go on various field trip opportunities that we offer here at school, and having those experiences, those culminate into what could potentially be a 0.5 credit. So that's just a little bit, that's an adjustment there, and our hope is that once we have our work-based learning coordinator in place, that students would work with the work-based learning coordinator to develop a personalized plan in terms of exploring a career pathway. Next updated policy that we are proposing, and this is something that we discussed with the curriculum committee a few months ago, is that we are noticing a decline in students actually sitting for the AP exams. One of the cornerstone pieces of taking an advanced placement course is actually sitting and taking the culminating exam. It is one of the things that really sets AP courses apart from others. It is part of that rigorous process and meant to help prepare students for post-secondary work. And because at this point it's optional for students, we have been seeing a decline. And it is for a variety of different reasons. While we have increased our enrollment in AP courses, the test comes with an expense, and the test costs $95. And if you're in a dual enrolled class, there's also an expense connected to earning the UConn credit as well. And we would like to mandate our students to take the AP exam, but that's a difficult ask when there's a dollar sign attached to it. So we, you know, we don't want it to be like if you take this course, it automatically comes with an expense. So one of the things that we proposed and discussed at the curriculum committee is that, and we actually did speak with a number of families and students, and they are talking about the increased financial burden and that the price tag does add up. It's very difficult financial times for a lot of families nowadays. So the other thing too is that taking an AP course doesn't, just taking the course doesn't allow you to earn credit. You actually have to sit for the exam, and if you score a 3 or higher, and we'll talk about this in the achievement report, that's when you have the opportunity to earn credit. So students are also losing out on an opportunity to earn college credit if they don't sit for the exam. So one of the things that we're proposing, and again, this is a budget-dependent type of change, is that we would mandate students to sit for the exam and that the district would cover the cost of the exam for students. Waivers are available for students that do qualify. That is something that we have through College Board as well as through the State Department of Education. So again, this particular policy change does have a price tag to it, and so some of it is going to be dependent upon the budget. Anybody have any questions with regard to these policy before I go on to the courses? Julia?
I actually have 2 questions. So the first one, in regards to the AP cost, is that going to be for all students? The cost would be covered, or just?
For any student that wouldn't qualify for a waiver. So
But we're not going to just say anyone who's signed up we're paying, or it would be that?
So any student that is enrolled in the course, we would want to cover the cost. So if they're not covered through the waiver, we would want the district to cover the cost.
Okay. And approximately how much is that?
It can range anywhere from $39,000 to $50,000, but it is less than 0.1% of the overall budget of the overall education budget. When I did the math on that.
Any other?
I know it sounds like a big number, but when you put it in perspective. I will say too, when we're talking about access, we want to provide an opportunity for access, and you don't want a price tag on a class and the opportunity to earn credit to be a deterrent for students. You want them to be able to have that opportunity, and particularly given that we have difficult financial times going on for a lot of families, we want to be able to provide that opportunity. Okay, and we have been seeing a decrease in the number of students opting to take the exam. And again, we feel as though it's important to sit and take the exam because that is part of that overall experience. It is part of the cornerstone of an advanced placement exam.
Thank you. Adam?
I guess my question is piggybacking off that. So if any child is taking an AP class, automatically their test is being covered by the town versus taking the class and if you need assistance, asking for it and then being granted it. Does that make sense? So if people have the means and are willing to pay for it, let them pay for it. But if they don't have the means or it's a tight year and they, submit something to you or to the teacher saying, we, request a waiver of the fee, then maybe you have a waiver. But to make it a blanket, everyone gets it covered, that might be a bit steep in a year.
Correct. And there's a few other options. You could say, you could cover 50% of the test. You could say that you'll cover the cost of 1 test per student per year, and that if they're taking 3 tests, they would have to pick up the cost of 2 more, the other 2. So there are a few different options. When we sat with, when we met with the curriculum committee and the discussion that we had, Jamie and Carrie, you can jump in because I know you were present for that, is that, in looking at in looking at all of it, they felt as though to create the greatest access for students would really be for us to cover the cost of the test for everybody, if possible.
Has that, so from a decision standpoint of how the payment structure is going to be laid out, is that that's not, it's contemplated here, but it would be more of a budgetary discussion during the budget process?
Right.
Okay.
So I have the wording in the AP courses as such that there's an expectation to take the exam, because I understand that this is budget dependent, and the budget, it's not going to play out for several months after we actually publish a program of studies and students sign up. So I tried to put some language into the actual course descriptions that talk about the expectation to take the exam versus that it's mandated. Whereas if there is support and it's available in the budget, that we would then require students to take the exam. And one of the things I want to put out for people that may be concerned about the exam is that it doesn't count against them in their school grade, their GPA, or anything like that. It's a measure for themselves to see how they did with the course, and then also based on their performance, they can opt to earn college credit. And again, we'll talk a little bit more about that in the achievement report. So,
just one quick follow-up too. Do we track the percentage of students that actually pass the exam?
yes, you'll see that in
Thank you.
in the achievement report. And I have the data for the percentage of students that have been taking the exam and how it has been declining over time.
Thank you.
The reason that it's part of this presentation right now is that if we made it mandatory for students to take the exam, it would appear in the program of studies.
Got it.
Change in practice.
Okay.
And we would want to be clear with the students that that was the expectation before they accepted the course.
Okay.
I think part of the reason of the discussion of just paying for whoever was going to take the exam is in a town of this size, and we have one high school, and maybe targeting is not the word, but as a student having to request payment assistance or requesting a waiver, I feel like some of them, if it's mandated, it takes that stigma off of them, and it's just, something that we pay for as a school district, because we have students that would not request that waiver, even though we know that they would need to utilize it. So that was part of our discussion in our curriculum committee meeting.
So if I can I was going to say something very similar to what you just said, Jamie, so thank you for saying that, because I think I hear the point that you raised, Adam, but I think one of the main points that we discussed in the curriculum committee was if students are capable of taking an AP class and ambitious enough to take an AP class, but are hesitant to take the test or reluctant to sign up for or apply for a waiver, not the waiver, it's not what I'm calling, it's not what it's called, but you know what I'm saying, what's it called? A waiver of the fee, I guess. We were concerned that would unnecessarily sort of bias who signed up for and was able to take the test that would, in some cases, allow them to apply for college credit. So just concerns about how that would shake out for our students overall.
Situation.
But we would also make sure that if we know somebody qualifies for a waiver, we would use the waiver. I just want to be clear about that. So,
Eileen, if I'm not mistaken, aren't these students already identified through the free and reduced process for National School Lunch? So we already know who these kids are.
yes,
Confidentially, obviously.
yes.
So if that's the case, I guess my question is this. I'm not sure what the question is actually, now that I'm thinking about it. But what would drive a student to take an AP class and not take the test if the intent is not to get credit?
Do you want to answer that, Tim?
The model that we currently have in place, as much as it's a financial issue, it's also students, every student, whether it's a financial issue or it's the student's choice, they can elect to take the exam or not. and they still receive the grade differential for taking an AP course, regardless of whether they take the exam. So if we could implement this model at a maximum fee of $50,000, we then would say that if you're taking an AP course, that all students, part of taking that course is taking the exam. That's currently not in place. So I hope that, is that what you were going to say, Mr. Oakes?
Well, I mean, just to throw a couple of other thoughts on there, just from experience over the last few years, there are a couple of different factors that come into it. Number one, you have to decide by November 1st if you're going to sign up and pay the $95 for that exam. And I know from talking to kids over the last few years, they don't know if they know that subject material by November 1st. You know, in some of the cases, they're going into some new subjects or deeper into subjects that they're familiar with and they feel confident with. On top of that, it's just the added stress level of they're taking typically a pretty rigorous course load to begin with, and now they're being asked to go and take an exam that isn't part of the final process or anything else. It's just an exam that they have to work on and study for specifically. So I know a lot of kids looked at this and said, I'm taking the class because I want to be challenged towards this end, but I don't need to worry about that exam for the AP purposes, because I know I'm not going to pursue this further in college, or I'm going to pursue this so far in college that it doesn't really matter what I get on an AP score, because I'm going to have to take this again in college. So rather than try and figure out what that answer is going to be in November, they decide with either by themselves or with their parents or a combination thereof, that $95 times however many classes they're registered for over 2 or 3 or 4 years, 3 years probably, is better spent elsewhere. You know, it could be an application to a university, it could be some other enrichment program, it could be, you know, materials at their athletic thing that they're involved in, whatever it may be. So.
I guess my next question is, why are we concerned whether they take the test or not?
There's a few other factors related to that. One, there students do talk about the, I will say, the fairness issue, that they're receiving the same quality points in terms of for GPA without fully completing the course. And as I said, a key cornerstone piece of the advanced placement course is sitting for that culminating exam. Similar to a college experience, and AP courses are a college, you know, there's meant to be a college level rigorous course. That would be one. There's another factor too in terms of when you're looking at rankings for the district and where you're falling, whether you like it or not, AP participation plays a major factor in that, a much larger factor than people realize. And your participation doesn't count in the course unless you sat for the exam. So they only, basically, you finish the course if you've sat for the exam. It doesn't matter what you scored on the exam, but as long as you've sat for the exam. So even though we may have 20 kids enrolled in an AP course, if only 13 kids sit for the exam, when they're doing factors and rankings and things like that for Newsweek, US News and World Report, and all of those things, they will only see 13. So there are some external factors that do impact that, you know, and that does have an impact on the overall town that may be concerned, you know, I don't want to say concerned, but, you know, some of that may impact in terms of people wanting and desiring to, you know, come to live in town based on, you know, the rankings for the schools and things like that. And again, the other proposal is if people don't want to, like if this is not a concern, we will leave it as is as optional. But we used to have 94% of our students in AP classes opt to sit for the exam. And this past year, and I know some of it was a little bit impacted by the pandemic, but we've been seeing an overall decline, and we're down to 65% of students sitting for the exam that are taking AP courses. So that's a pretty significant decline in the course of 5 years. So, and when, in speaking with Mrs. Pyrus, who actually works with all the signups and tries to track everybody down, like how come you're not taking the exam, the biggest factor has been the expense of it.
Senior year, a lot of students have committed to colleges already, so sitting for that exam and earning that credit isn't exactly important to those students. So will there be any exceptions for students like in those cases?
What do you, I'm sorry, in terms of extensions, what do you mean by that?
Or like exceptions?
Oh,
so, like, yeah.
exceptions. You either have to make it, I think you have to allow it to be optional for everybody or not. And so again, in the achievement report, we'll talk a little bit about how widely accepted the AP tests are if you score a 3 or higher. It's very widely accepted. And that is a movement across the country. 2,100 colleges across the country accept AP scores at 3 or higher for, in terms of earning credit. And some of it does depend on the type of program that you're going into. So.
Change. I know especially last year with COVID, we had the possible fallback of not taking the exam and you would get your money back. So kids really didn't have to focus on the course if they didn't want to take the exam, but I think possibly having to take the exam might force students a little bit to focus a little harder, and at the end of the year focus on reviewing everything, like knowing that they have to sit for the exam might honestly force students to learn better and focus on their learning.
Yeah, thank you.
I think it's great that you just, we encourage that from the both of you. That's why you're on the board with us. Any other questions? So I have one more.
Okay.
And it has to do with the internship, work-based learning, and as well as the fee. So for the AP courses, I know that the governor has started this new task force, which it's called the Office of Workforce Strategy. And since this is, a movement being pushed by the governor, do you know if any money is going to be coming down the pike to districts that are doing certain things?
I'm aware of the task force,
Yeah.
but I'm not aware of what you're asking specifically at this point in time. I know that they do push out, they've been advertising and pushing out a lot of different programs in terms of work-based learning, workforce learning, particularly in high need areas, manufacturing and the like. So, but I'm not aware of what they may be offering in that sense.
Yeah, I just didn't know if, potentially down the road, that might be something that could be coming our way and offset the cost, but I wasn't sure. Do you have anything to add?
No, I'm aware of the workforce, but I'm not aware of any type of grants or funding that's been promised.
Okay. And the last question I just have about the fee for the AP courses, do you know any other school districts that currently do this?
I would say the school districts that are more likely to do this are those that have high rates of socioeconomic need, is where you will see that the test is just, the cost for the exam is covered. So we would, but it is a bit of a trend that students aren't necessarily opting for the exam, and so I don't know if other districts will follow, but I've seen it, but it's usually in districts that have a very, there's a socioeconomic need.
Thank you. Any other questions? All right, well, thank you.
Okay.
Continue on.
Okay, the next page there. So we are proposing a new course in our business department. This is based on an interest expressed by students. Thank you, GameStop, for the growing interest in the stock market and investments and those kinds of things. We currently offer personal finance, but then don't offer a course beyond that. So we are proposing a half-year course in finance and investments that will focus on, as you can see, personal wealth management, risk management, and the like, for students that are interested in that field. In terms of offering changes, currently business law, business survey, and communications are offered as full-year courses. The majority of our elective offerings, whether they're in the elective classes or in the core departments, run as semester classes. And one of the things that was discussed that the business teachers were also receiving feedback on was that students who are very interested in business have limited opportunity to take multiple courses in business, and therefore they're proposing for business law, business survey, and communications to be reduced to semester courses, and they're able to update the curriculum appropriately. And the business survey we would rename as Introduction to Business. We just feel like that's just a more appropriate name for students, as that's really the introductory course for the business department. The communications course, Ngss no longer offers that as a CCP course, therefore we are able to make that curriculum adjustment for the communications course. We feel that this will allow students to be able to access more courses in the business department, as well as potentially be able to take other courses outside of the business department by reducing them to semester courses. In English, it's really one course change, but it does impact another course, and this is a change directed by UConn. In the past, students were able to earn credit for UConn courses English 1010 and English 1011. They've taken that off the table now as part of their ECE program. Now students will earn credit for English 1007. So that will align with what we're already offering with our seminar and writing, and the title change comes from UConn in terms of seminar and writing and multimodal composition. So basically a variety of different types of writing. And then because they're not offering the additional 1011, we used to offer AP Literature and Composition as a dual enrolled course. We will no longer offer it as a dual enrolled course. It will just simply be a standalone AP course. And again, that change is solely driven by UConn. Okay, next page in math. Our new course is Honors Algebra 1. This has been part of our multi-year math the changes that we've been going on in math. This is part of our multi-year plan that involved some changes at the middle school in terms of fewer tracks at the middle school. We are finding with fewer tracks, we'll have more students coming to the high school taking algebra, and the other thing that was a concern is that this offers an opportunity for students to get into the honors track in math if they had not had the opportunity in middle school, if it's appropriate and recommended for them. In terms of, we have some name changes going on here. So calculus concepts, it will now simply be titled Calculus. Honors Calculus, we were exploring the curriculum a little bit more closely and find that it aligns with the AP Calculus AB curriculum. And so we are going to offer it as the AP Calculus AB class. This now allows students to potentially earn college credit if they sit for the exam and get a 3 or higher. For that. And then what we currently offer is a dual enrolled, which is the UConn ECE Calculus AB, AP, AB, will now be UConn ECE Calculus BC. So it will align with the AP Calculus BC. So basically, the AP program has 2 levels of calculus. They have BC, which is the highest, and then they have AB, which is just below that, okay? The UConn course, which we do have success with, truly aligns more with the BC curriculum, and therefore we're going to align it in this way too, and still offering the honors calculus. It will be AP Calculus, AB, and they will have that opportunity to earn college credit. Okay, I know that was saying calculus a lot, but I hope everybody followed that. All right. I'm sorry. So geometry is now geometry with statistics, and just this again has been an ongoing discussion. This kind of fleshes out in our achievement report in terms of working with our math curriculum. We're finding a large portion of what students encounter in terms of SAT and some other testing, as well as information that we're receiving from colleges. It's important that students are exposed to topics in statistics. And therefore, we have our geometry course will now be geometry with statistics, because we are going to have some statistics unit as part of that course. We have explored the option of a potentially half-year geometry, half-year statistics. This is a little bit of a hybrid for the time being. We want to see how that goes for a couple of years, and then if we decide to split them into 2 semester courses, we may move in that direction. And then the suspended course is the Balanced Algebra and Geometry 3 class, and basically that is the final phase out of what is called our bag track, which again, that is our effort to ensure that all students, when they come to the high school, at a minimum are starting in algebra, which is truly the cornerstone of what they need in terms of mathematics instruction and moving forward beyond that. In music, we're suspending Introduction to Music Theory. We've just had a number of years where there's been a lack of interest, so we're not offering that. In science, it's an offering change. We were fortunate to offer a new course this year in zoology. We have 2 full sections that are going to be running second semester, and our teacher, Mr. Wisniewski, also teaches at Southern Connecticut and came to us in terms of creating a partnership with Southern Connecticut State University so that students who are taking zoology beginning next year, we've entered into an agreement with them that students will have the opportunity to earn college credit. One of the things that we are going to continue to push at the high school is that we don't want to always associate earning college credit with the AP type classes. There are a wide variety of college credit bearing opportunities available for our students through a variety of institutions in the state, and we're going to continue to pursue a wide variety of partnerships and course offerings as we move forward over the next few years. Students can use those college credits not necessarily just for 4-year college, but they're great for associate's degrees as well as certifications programs, which we learned quite a bit about when we went to Ngss a couple months ago. So we're excited about that new partnership. In social studies, the new course, and I want to remind everybody that it is state mandated that we offer this course, African American, Black, and Puerto Rican Latino Studies. It is a full year course, and we will be offering that as an elective course in grade 12. So again, it's optional if students want to sign up. If we have enough students to run that course, we will. There is a link available in your document that if you want to see the curriculum, which the state worked with with CERC, the State Education Resource Center, developed the curriculum, and in order to run the course, that's the curriculum that you need to follow. And the link is provided if you want to take a look at the curriculum. It is 300 pages. I just want to give you a heads up. There are a number of districts that are piloting the course this year, and I would suspect they're actually going to make a few revisions before it runs again next year, because our guess is that there's too much in the course, we don't know that they're actually going to be able to get through it, and so we actually think as though they may end up scaling back. They are also providing a wide variety of training for people that are going to be teaching the course, and we are looking to identify a couple of instructors to make sure that they're trained next semester and prepared should we be able to run the course for the following school year. Anybody with questions?
This is a state mandated offering.
State mandated offering, and just like we do with all of our courses, if we have enough students that express interest, we will run the course. If we don't, we'll continue to offer it as we are required, but our hope is that we do have enough students that will be interested that we can offer the course, and again, it is elective offering, and I believe we set our prerequisite as U.S. history, so we would want students to go through our U.S. history curriculum prior to taking this course, and therefore that's why we're offering it for 12th graders, because our 11th graders take U.S. history.
But also, it is a state-provided curriculum.
Correct.
It's not something that our teachers here are working on.
Correct.
It's state, and that's what's mandated to use.
Yes, correct. And that's why I did provide the link there for anybody that wants to look at the extensive document. Okay.
Thank you.
Yes.
To add on to that, I believe, and perhaps you know more than, sorry, wait for the mic. I believe, and maybe you know more than I do about this, that while this is the curriculum that's being piloted currently, there may be alternate curriculums forthcoming through the state.
Yes, we actually just heard that recently, but again, it's not as though we're free to just write our own course for this, so there may be other options available, but I think we'll be directed to the resources that are available. Okay, so the last page is technology education, and I think prior to just going through some of the changes here, as you know, I think we've been trying to do a lot of work in our technology education department in terms of garnering more interest from students. We've been working on advertising a number of courses that we have available. If you've been seeing our videos that have been posted on our social media and they're on our TV, those are all student generated about the actual courses that are running in technology education, which is great. We've also spent some time with local business owners and leaders. We went to Ngss. A number of us went over to Ngss to look at their various programs, including their manufacturing education program, certification programs, as well as associate's degrees. We also took the opportunity to take 140 students to Aerospace Alley Workforce Opportunity Fair in November, which is 116 aerospace manufacturing companies that exist here in the state of Connecticut. And our students really, they loved it, and it was great, and we're really looking forward to continuing that. But in all of that, we were really trying to take the time to talk to business owners about what do kids need? Like, what skills do they need? So we're really trying to find the right balance of, we have great resources available, right, for digital media. We have radio station, we have TV studio, and now we've been able to expand and be mobile, for the, through the work of Nick Smith and his crew. So a few things that stood out from some of the people in the industry as they were talking about, some of the things we were learning from some other schools is the opportunity to earn certifications prior to getting out of high school. So one of our first course offerings is we would like to offer emergency medical services. We are offering our firefighter class again this spring. We have 15 students signed up. We are very fortunate to be running that. We are working to partner with a volunteer or paid firefighter, but a professional in the field to actually co-teach that course with our high school teacher. And we're very excited. We have a number of people that are interested in terms of that. And so for our emergency medical services, we are looking to follow that same model and partner with a professional in that field to co-teach that course. And with emergency medical services, our goal would be for students to earn their EMR certification, Emergency Medical Responder certification, by taking that semester course. And you'll notice that there is an age requirement in that particular course. And then as you can see underneath that, if we garner enough interest, whether it's the following year or the year after, we would really like to offer a second layer of that for students that are 16 years and older, and they would then earn an EMT certification. So this way they're actually leaving high school with, beyond just college credits, something else that's very tangible for them. We are reinstating computer-aided drafting, and what we're excited about is that we are working to partner with Ngss so that students can earn credit, and then that credit can be applied towards if they want to go into manufacturing or another program at Ngss. One of the things that we actually learned from Ngss is that right now students for much of the manufacturing work go up to Asnuntuck, and they are actually building a brand new facility in Farmington. So they will be right around the corner from us, and we can hopefully continue to create partnerships, and they seemed very interested when we were talking with them, and we're looking for a variety of other opportunities. So we're bringing computer-aided drafting back, but we are going to align it with Ngss. In terms of offering changes, our architectural design will now be available for 9th grade. Prior to that, it was 10 through 12. Firefighting leadership is just the second layer of that firefighting class will be part of the honors challenge. And then television production 2 will now be available to grades 9 through 12. Prior to that, it was grades 10 through 12. So some students may take TV production 1 first semester and may want to continue second semester. In terms of suspended courses, and this is where we really had a lot of thoughtful discussion. It's hard to be everything to everybody, and we also wanted to see were we seeing some overlap with some other courses that we were running, and so therefore we made some decisions to suspend computer technology, video game design 1, and video game design 2. We currently offer other computer science and tech-related courses, and we know that there's definitely an overlap with the video game design courses with our computer science discoveries courses. So we will work with students to make sure that they are aware, if you're interested in video game design, this is the class to sign up for. So even though we may not be offering video game design, here's a class that will have video game design built into it as well. And then as far as name changes, you can see the name changes. Firefighter is now Introduction to Fire Service based on recommendation from the firefighters that we were working with recently. Introduction to STEM design is now STEAM design, and that really is to create that articulation with the middle school that is having really great success with the STEAM program. Lots of kids interested, and we're hoping if you're interested at the middle school and in STEAM and you see this course at the high school, you're going to continue with it. And then we renamed Power 1 and Power 2 to more accurately reflect the course, and so that it's more clear what that course is. Mechanics 1, Engines, and Mechanics 2, Automotive. And that wraps up the changes. So I don't know if anybody has questions.
I think it's a smart idea to go with the half semester, or the half-year courses, the semester long, on all of those electives, because it is such a broad palette, and I know we've talked in the past about the difficulties to get people in there. So going to the halves, and I mean, would it be unreasonable to look at quarters for some of the even more niche things, if those would fit?
We could potentially eventually take a look at that. We may have some other things that we're thinking about for the future that may help open student schedules up a little bit more.
Sure, but just those variety options is great.
And just comment, I love the emergency medical services class offering, and being able to come out of it with the certification, I think is a great tool, you know, because we know that post-high school looks different for everybody, and we're not saying that everybody has to do one thing. I think by providing some of these other, you know, the computer-aided, the CAD, the computer-aided drafting, I mean, some of these other things, talking about the internships, I like the fact that I think that we're broadening our base. We're not just high school to college. I mean, there are different paths to success, and the same path is not the right one for everybody, so I like the changes.
Great. And with some of our existing courses, we're actually looking to build in more field experiences, particularly in tech ed, certifications that relate to like tool safety, OSHA safety, and what we're really on the hunt for, a CNC course as well that we could offer here, because that was also an expressed need as we were talking with manufacturing business leaders as well.
I just want to add on, I think the emergency medical course is not only great for people because it does give them a pathway directly into the workforce, but it's also a certification that college students can pick up shifts during a vacation, during summertime, during, in many locations based on that certification, because it is a national level certification.
Anything else? Thank you for that. That was excellent. Thank you to the board members for your thoughtful questions. Thank you for all the work you guys have put into this, as well as the committee. Do we have a motion?
I'll move to approve the new course offerings and revisions to the Berlin High School Program of Studies for 2022 to 2023 as presented.
Motion. Motion by Carrie, second by Adam. Any discussion? I know we asked questions as we went.
Yeah, no, I just want to say, I'll echo what Adam said and also what Erin just said, and that is, I appreciate the expansion of pathways to success, as Adam put it, and recognition of such. And also I agree, Erin, that having developed, not personally, but for anyone who does develop competencies with respect to emergency medical services, those are skills that you carry with you regardless of what your next step is beyond high school. So I applaud the work that has gone into expanding and altering the curriculum.
Any other discussion? All right, let's move to a vote. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay, the vote is 9-0. Moving on to the Student Achievement Report, and we will turn it back over to Dr. Mcgurk.
Hello again. So you'll notice this year that we've called this the Student Achievement Report rather than the Student Testing Report, because we've tried to broaden out and report on some other additional measures of student achievement beyond the traditional testing report. I know you probably missed it last year, but you may remember that we did not have a testing report last year because the testing was suspended in the spring of 2020. So we're going to start this evening with speaking about the annual state testing, and these are the tests that are required under state and federal law, including the Smarter Balanced Assessment, the Next Generation Science Standards Assessment, and the SAT. So by federal and state law, we're required to offer those tests, or to administer those tests in grades 3 to 8 for English language, arts, and math, and once in high school. So the SAT fills that role at the high school. And in science, the students have to be tested in 3 grade bands, once in grades 3 to 5, once in 6 to 9, and once in grades 10 to 12. The annual assessments are designed to give us a snapshot of student achievement and to give us the ability to look at our overall student levels of achievement, to look at performance over time, and to use that feedback to help us make programmatic decisions and changes in the curriculum as necessary. So I'm going to start with the Smarter Balanced results from 2020 and let everyone know that the Smarter Balanced is a spring administration each year. It's online, it's computer adaptive. Students receive scores at achievement levels 1 to 4. And this year there's a little bit of a difference in the way that it was administered, in that it was administered both in person and remotely to some learners, which is different in 2021. So we had students who were in person, who took the exam in person. We had students that were benefiting from remote instruction, some of whom came into school to take the test on site, and some who tested in the comfort of their homes through the miracle of technology. When we look at the state level data, you may remember that we had no testing in the spring of 2020. There was actually a lot of controversy about whether testing would be administered in the spring of 2021. There was a lot of sense nationally that it was adding another layer of stress, both for teachers and for students, to have them have to undergo testing. There were a lot of concerns about the circumstances of the testing and how it was going to work to administer testing remotely to students that were at home, where we would be if we were in hybrid and kids were coming back and forth. And ultimately, the decision was made to go ahead and administer the testing with the thought that since the testing was not done in the spring of 2020, it was important to administer tests in the spring of 2021 to get a sense of where students were after the disruption of school closures in 2020 and the different learning circumstances for the 2021 school year. Overall, when the CSDE looked at the analysis of data, they found that students who learned mostly in person during the year lost the least ground academically, and those who learned in hybrid or remote models overall showed weaker student achievement and weaker growth during the pandemic. I just want to be clear, that does not mean that every student who participated in hybrid instruction or every student who learned remotely did not perform as well, but those were like overall trends. And while the impacts of the pandemic were seen in all subjects, the observed differences were largest in mathematics. So the next couple of slides I'm going to show you have to do with the statewide trend data. So this is not Berlin-specific data, this is overall state data. So what you see across the top of the screen is that in English language arts and in mathematics, there was a drop-off from student performance from the 18-19 school year to the proficiency rates during the 2021 school year. And of course, there's no data for 1920, so that's why it's going back 2 years to look at the data. When you look at the drop-offs across, you see a particular drop-off in the upper side on the right with math for students with high needs. On the bottom, you see students without high needs, and in all 3 learning segments, whether students were fully, mostly remote, in hybrid or fully mostly in person, hybrid, or fully mostly remote. Overall, across the state, there were drop-offs in performance, and that was true in general across grade levels. When we look at our own data here in Berlin, I said earlier that there are 4 levels of performance. Levels 3 and levels 4 are considered meeting expectations and exceeding expectations. So we often combine those meets and exceeds together. That's what's highlighted at the end. So you'll see in English language arts, across the grade levels in grade 3, we had 63.5% of the students meet or exceed. In grade 4, 55.7. In grade 5, 65.6. Then 50.5, 53.2, and 53.8. So for a little bit more visual representation, this graphic shows bars representing students and their levels of performance. So if you look all the way to the left, the red bar represents the percentage of students that scored at the lowest level of performance, yellow for students that were approaching, green for met, and blue for exceeded. And you'll see in the grades 3, 4, and 5, where our students were mostly in person during the school year, we had the highest level of students reaching that highest level of performance. When we look at our subgroup performance, we break this out and look at all students versus our students with high needs and our students with disabilities. The high needs subgroup includes students that receive special education services, are English language learners, or students who qualify for free and reduced lunch. And you'll see that the data in Berlin this year continues the same trend that we've seen in past years and shows the same sort of trend that we see at the state level and across the nation, that students with high needs and students with disabilities have what we see as an achievement gap between where all students perform and where those students in those subgroups perform. Now, one of the data pieces that we typically show is the Durg comparison. I'm showing this slide not because I expect you to be able to read this, but just to show you how complicated this was this year. When we're looking at Smarter Balanced Student Achievement this year, we have students who learned in a variety of instructional modes. We had students that were fully, mostly in person, students that were in hybrid, and students that were fully or mostly remote. And we had students who were in those models for different amounts of time during the year. So, for example, in Berlin, our kids in middle school were in hybrid instruction for most of the year, and then they were mostly in person towards the very end of the year and during the time when the testing was administered. I took this chart and broke it to make it easier for you to read. So I have 3 slides to show the Durg comparison in English language arts. The first is for students that were fully or mostly in person. So the yellow highlight shows where Berlin was with this group compared to the other schools in the Durg. The next slide shows students that were mostly in hybrid instruction across the year and where Berlin fell relative to the Durg. And the final slide shows students that were mostly or fully remote and where Berlin fell relative to other schools in the Durg. As we move to math, we see that this slide, so all of the slides for math mirror the slides for English language arts. So the first slide shows the percentages of students who are scoring at the meets or exceeds level. So again, I've combined the level 3, which is meets, and the level 4 that's exceeds into an overall meets and exceeds. And you see quite a bit of variation. Our 3rd graders scored relatively well compared to the other grade levels, which is a bit of a surprise that the 3rd graders are taking the test for the very first time, and it was not a usual school year for them. So So you see 64.6% meet or exceeds in math at grade 3, 49.4, 48.1, 46.9, 43.5, 43% across the grade levels. And again, in a visual representation, you see some variation across the grades with some strong performances in terms of the students that are at the exceeding level in grades 3 and 5. And again, the visual representation of the strong performance in grade 3. When we look at our subgroup data, again, we see an achievement gap between students who have high needs and students with disabilities. The gap for students with disabilities is particularly high in math, and the gap gets wider as the students go up through the grade levels. And so that's one of the things that we're working on as a district. Again, when we look at the Durg comparisons, this first slide is the fully, mostly in person, where Berlin fell. The next slide is hybrid. And the next slide is fully or mostly remote. And I just want to comment that there is essentially no particular reason why students were in one of those learning instructional modes that had nothing to do with their own achievement. So it's not that students who were choosing to stay home had different achievement levels going into the assessments, which is one of the things that makes it particularly challenging to do the analysis this year. In terms of ongoing work and next steps, you're very familiar with the Berlin theme of continuous improvement. So this is something that we're always looking at in terms of what we can do to strengthen our overall performance and student achievement. We continue to provide professional development for multiple departments related to the teaching of reading, writing, and math. We have done workshops on writing and social studies, on reading and English language arts, in Math Studio, and we include special education teachers in these trainings when it's possible. We have ongoing examination and revision of our sequencing of units and expectations in literacy and math. This was particularly necessary last year when, in the summer between the spring of 2020 and coming back in the fall of 2021, and then again this past year to update our expectations and to look at where kids really were in terms of what we needed to provide for them instructionally. We've also been reviewing and revising our protocols for test preparation. So we've used practice tests and we use interim assessments in math and in ELA. Interim assessments are designed by the State Department of Education, and they mirror the Smarter Balanced in terms of giving kids experience with the type of items and the format of the testing. And that IAB language and data comes right back to the teachers so that they're able to use that information on an ongoing basis to provide feedback to students and to adjust their instruction. We've also looking at strengthening our use of formative assessment data to provide targeted support and enrichment opportunities. One of the tools that we've been using is a software program called IXL, which we're now using in grades 2 to 8, and it's also available for our high school students. This provides us as a tool with diagnostic assessments and can help us analyze data and set individual goals and allows us to differentiate as well. We've been collaborating with the PPS department, the People Services Department, to align and extend instruction. And one of the new features this year is that we worked with Lyman Systems to create a data warehouse. And we're having great success already this year using the data warehouse to organize the data that's available for our teachers and specialists and to put it together in a user-friendly way so that teachers can use that on an ongoing basis to shape their instruction. All right, I'm going to move to NGSS data in grades 5, 8, and 11. This is a completely separate assessment, but it's set up and scored in a similar way. Online assessment. It was also administered both in person and to remote learners. and it's scored with achievement levels from 1 to 4. Across the state, there were dips. The purple line on this chart represents kids that learned in fully or mostly remote, and those students in general across the grade levels had weaker achievement in science. And as you can imagine, it's difficult to have the full, robust science learning experience over Zoom that you have when students are in front of you in the classroom. So at our grade levels where teachers were providing instruction in hybrid modes, that was something that was a real challenge because they wanted to provide rich lab experiences, but they had to balance when they could do that when kids were in school and flip-flop to be able to give kids the same learning experiences. But that was a particular challenge. Our next generation science results are a bright spot for us. When we look at this percentage of students who scored meets or exceeds expectations, you'll see 57.7% in grade 5, 62.7% in grade 8, and 72.3% in grade 11. I'm reading too many of the numbers here. So again, visual representation. When you look at that green and the green and the blue bar combined show you the meets and exceeds, and that shows you in grades 5, in grades 8, and grades 11. And when I met earlier this evening with the curriculum committee, one of the things we talked about was the fact that the NGSS exam in grade 11 doesn't have deep meaning for our high school students. It's not something that affects their grades. It's not necessarily something that colleges look at. So the ability for our students to do well really depends on their relationships with their instructors and their passion about learning science, and if they're willing to step up and be engaged and do that in the examination. And we clearly see that at the high school. We've got across grades 5, 8, and 11, we've done some great work with our teachers in helping them embrace teaching the NGSS way, which is really inquiry-based, very hands-on, and I think we're seeing the results of that strong work, and teachers who have really embraced teaching in a very different way than many of us experience science in our own past practice. Moving forward, this next slide shows the same breakout with all of our students with high needs, and our students with disabilities. And here you see, while there is still a gap, we did have a good percentage of students with high needs that met or exceeded the expectations on the science exam, and the number of students receiving special education services meeting or exceeding actually went up across the grade levels, which is different than the pattern that we've seen in the other grades. Some of the ongoing work and next steps, we continue to provide professional development opportunities. We have a number of teachers that are turnkeying professional development for their colleagues, including things like using the virtual reality goggles for kids to be able to envision the inside of the human body, or to explore things more deeply. That's been very engaging and something that our teachers are really interested in learning about. We've dedicated a lot of summer curriculum time to work on new and revised units, to continue to align with NGSS practices and to make phenomenon-based lessons and units. We're using mystery science as a new resource this year, which is helping us replace some of the outdated curriculum materials in K-5. And we're also using Gizmos, which is another software product that is great for simulations and is helping teachers with assessment. And finally, we're looking at reviewing and revising protocols for test prep, including using the types of items that are on the NGSS assessment in routine instruction and unit assessments. Okay, we're going to move now to SAT. So we're looking at the 2021 SAT school day results at Berlin High School. The SAT is a paper and pencil test administered on a school day in the spring. Again, it's assessments in English language arts and math with the same 4 levels of achievement. SAT is broken out with a number of different scores, which provides us a lot of data to analyze. We have 2 key scores, which are the evidence-based reading and writing, and the math scores that are 2 separate sections of the report where the test where students get different scores that are combined into their overall. The test also requires students to do analysis in science, to do analysis in history and social studies, as well as separate testing of skills in reading, writing and language, and mathematics. When we look at the statewide data, I just want to note that this is a caution that this is unmatched student data, and there was low participation among many fully and mostly remote learners and students with high needs. But again, we see the drop-off from for students with high needs in English language arts from the 2018-2019 school year, and particularly low scores for students that were learning in fully or most remote levels, learning models. So in our English area, we're looking first at the evidence-based reading and writing. I highlighted our number of students and the percentage of students that met or exceeded. So 67.5% of our students met or exceeded the expectation in English language arts. When we look at this visually, there's just 1 grade level on the screen. So the green and the blue represent the students who met or exceeded. When we look at our Durg comparison, in this part of the report, I'm just showing you the hybrid because nearly all of the state high schools had instruction in the hybrid mode last year. So when we look, the yellow highlighted bar shows you Berlin's performance relative to other schools in the Durg in reading and writing. In the subgroups, when we look at the students that met or exceeded, overall, as I said, we had 67.5% of all students, 43.2% of students with high needs, and 0% of our students with disabilities. So that continues to be an area that a focus for us to include the teachers of students with special needs in professional development to make sure that they're learning the skills and expectations, and that's been something that they've been working on at the high school, and Eileen will have more to say about that. Overall in math, we had 75 students meet or exceed the expectations in math last year, which is 36.4% of our students. And you can see that that's a lower number than we've had in recent years. So the color bands here shift considerably. Many more students in the approaching band, which is the yellow band, than in the meet or exceeds band. And when we look at our SAT performance, in comparison to the Durg, the yellow line represents where Berlin fell relative to the Durg. And while this is lower than the comparison in ELA relative to the Durg, when we went back and looked at other years, we've had some years that are better than this in math, and at least one year in the last 7 or 8 years that was lower than this. In math, we see the same pattern with overall relatively lower percentage, 13.6% of our high needs students meeting or exceeding in math, and none of our students with disabilities last year in grade 11 met the standard in mathematics. So Eileen is going to share her part of the data, and then she's going to do the next steps at the end of her data presentation.
So we are fortunate at the high school level that we have other measures, particularly measures of achievement available to us. One is our participation in the advanced placement program, as we were just talking in terms of what are AP classes. Obviously, they're rigorous courses that were designed by College Board with the intent of helping prepare students for post-secondary coursework as they move on. You can see that we have a number of AP courses that we offer at BHS. It's not always a guarantee that every course runs every year because it is based on enrollment, but we're fortunate that we offer a variety of different courses. In terms of AP performance, the benchmark score for college and career readiness is considered a 3 or higher. The Connecticut Board of Regents on Higher Education honors AP courses by awarding college credit for scores of 3 or higher. So all of our community colleges and state universities and colleges, with the exception of UConn, if you score a 3 or higher, you will be earning college credit. 53% of our students from last year who attended 2 or 4 year colleges attend schools that accepted scores of 3 or higher for college credit. And just to show you, there's 22 schools in Connecticut, 116 in Massachusetts, and 9 in Rhode Island. Higher ed institutions accept AP courses for college credit. And I point that out because many of our Berlin High School students, they tend to stay a little bit closer to home, but there are 2,100 institutions across the country that accept credit at 3 or higher for that exam score. And you can see our performance in terms of our overall average performance in terms of percentage of students that score 3 or higher that take the exam. In 2017, it was 80%, 2018, 84, 2019, 80, 2020, 78, and 2021, 65%. And I'm sorry, I gave you the wrong stat. The number of test takers has decreased over time. So this past year, while our performance dropped to 65%, we only had 71% of students that were eligible to take the test, versus in 2018, when we were at 84%, we had 94% of our students take the test. So we are losing, I'll be honest, we're losing some of our top performers on some of those exams in terms of that. So, and again, it's an opportunity for them to earn college credit should they participate in the exam. But overall, our students perform very well. While there was a bit of a dip last year in the number of test takers, and it, I do believe that impacted performance. I also think the fact that we were in hybrid most of the year also impacted the amount of curriculum coverage they were able to do, and our teachers really still did a phenomenal job. And we have great AP teachers, and they do an excellent job. We also offer additional college credit-bearing courses through UConn. We're very fortunate that we offer a number of courses through UConn. Some of our courses are dual enrolled, so they're AP/UConn, so you have the opportunity to earn credit through AP and or UConn. We also have the opportunities with Ngss as well as with Capital Community College, and as we discussed with the program of studies, we're expanding into Southern Connecticut State University as well. This also, our UConn participation is a highlight, so just quickly with this graph, the thick blue line is the number of sections of UConn courses that we run. So we may run, say, 3 English courses, so that impacts that number of courses from year to year that we run. Sometimes some courses may not run if we don't have enough interest in it. But then the thin lines that go across, Berlin is the red line as far as participation. The purple line is the Durg student average, number of students that are participating, and the green is the county average. So you can clearly see we have a much higher percentage of participation with the UConn program, and we were ranked 4th in the state last year. So that's really a bright spot for us, and our students taking advantage of these opportunities that we're partnering with UConn. If we take all of our classes combined, AP, UConn, Ngss, CCP courses, Capital Community College, and just look overall at the number of enrollments that we have, we basically, in 16-17, we had 535 students. In 19-20, we went as high as 600, not students, I'm sorry, enrollments. 19-20, we had 697 enrollments, and this past year we've had 607. That's a significant number of enrollments in college credit-bearing courses, which I think speaks very highly for our program, our students that are motivated. And one of the things that I'm really excited about is that it's not, we're encouraging students, just take one before you leave high school. Take one college level course, you know, just so that you have that experience. So, and we are seeing that expansion, and we're very excited about that. Our graduation rates, as you can see, we have very high graduation rate. We still don't have verification from the state. We're still waiting on last year's class because basically they follow our cohort from whoever starts with us freshman year. The state tracks them all the way through. So we anticipate, again, a very high percentage once the state verifies that for us this year. So again, high graduation rate is a sign of achievement and success for us. Our post-secondary plans, as you can see, we have 90, if you combine 4-year, 2-year, and other schools, we have 91.8% of our students that move on to some sort of post-secondary education. And again, it might be 4-year, 2-year, but it may also be technical or trade school, additional certification. We have 1.2% went into the military and 7% went into the workforce. As far as post-secondary persistence, so this notion of students having the experience of some of those college credit-bearing courses, I believe helps with our persistence rate. And you can see for the graduating class, the percentage of students who enrolled and then returned for a second year. We have, for 4 years in a row, been awarded the College Success Gold Award because we have a high percentage of students that return for a second year. The state average is 87 to 89%, so you can see that we're definitely above that average. And then I also think it's important that, you know, even though maybe the SAT scores may not be exactly where we would hope them to be, we have other measures of success that also show that our students are doing well. We had a National Merit finalist last year. We had 2 National Merit Commended Scholars, 98 Presidential Award recipients with an average of 90% or higher, 58 National Honor Society members, 30 Rho Kappa members, which is the National Social Studies Honor Society. We had 44 students earn community service citations, 35 students earned the Seal of Biliteracy. We started 2 years ago with 3 students earning that distinction, so this is huge, and we actually anticipate that that number will continue to grow for us, and we think, again, that's another amazing achievement for us. And then 14 capstone exemplars. In terms of ongoing work, and this speaks to some of the SAT work that Aaron was referencing, we have been very intentional this year. We provided curriculum development work to develop specific SAT support lessons that are administered to all students in grades 9 through 11. So we have several co-taught classes where we have the gen ed teacher and the special education teacher, so they're involved in administering these lessons and learning more about the SAT and strategies and skill and tracking student performance. They're basically providing lessons, providing opportunities for students to practice beyond just the PSAT, and we're really being intentional about tracking their progress. We want to know come January, like where students are so that we can somewhat predict their performance, and if they need additional intervention, that kind of goes down to the third bullet. We can provide additional interventions through our math problem solving lab, through our academic reading course, through our academic resource center, which is a new tier 2 intervention for us this year. We have the IXL math program, Khan Academy, as well as Common Lit, which is another program that we use to help support student work. And all of those things allow us to customize interventions for students that may not be meeting benchmark. Ultimately, even if students don't meet benchmark, we are always looking for that growth, and so we're working to track that as well. Again, we already talked a little bit about the realignment of mathematics units and courses. I do believe that some of our lower scores in math, we've needed to do some more curriculum alignment. We felt as though students necessarily weren't getting far enough in, say, the Algebra 2 curriculum, and needed more exposure to the statistics, which is a pretty high percentage on the SAT test. And again, I mentioned the notion of being intentional about increasing college credit opportunities for a broader range of students. And then again, also the highlighting additional measures of achievement beyond just the standardized SAT, test scores.
You want me to hold?
Sure.
Do you mind? You talked about the ECE classes.
I'm sorry?
ECE, UConn ECE. Is there a cost associated with taking those classes?
There is, and one of the reasons we weren't talking about like mandating that is because that actually is a transaction that in the university and the student, they don't go through the school. So the school is responsible for ordering, administering the tests, as well as collecting the payments and all of that for College Board.
So is a student allowed to take an ECE class if they don't pay for it?
Yes,
They're allowed
but they wouldn't earn they wouldn't get the transferable UConn credit if they don't enroll in the UConn course.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
It does, and there's no talk of covering that cost.
Sure. I mean, I would love that as well, to be honest with you. We wanted to start with the AP at this point, so.
I know, I've paid those bills to UConn.
If you ask me that question, of course I'm going to say, yes, I would love that. That would be fabulous for our students.
Just curious, thank you.
So just to wrap up in terms of the overall presentation, I just want to let you know about some additional information that you have available. So if you keep going forward in the slides that are in your Schoology folder, you'll see that there are appendices that are attached that have many additional slides showing you other ways of looking at the student achievement data. The reason some of those slides were not included in the overall report to the board is because the CSDE has been very explicit this year, cautioning schools and districts against comparisons from about this year's data to past year's data because of the variations in how students learned, in how many kids who tested remotely in different districts, how many participated in the in-person tests, and essentially we're not able to match the data sets the same way that we have been able to in the past. So there are additional slides that show you some of the longitudinal data past the slides that I presented. There are more there to satisfy anyone's curiosity who wants to see that data over time. But I do recommend that you take a minute to look at the cautionary statement, because I think that it is significant to make sure that when we're thinking about performance over time, that we're doing the best that we can to compare comparable data. There also is information in the folder in Schoology that says additional information that has the full report from the State Department of Ed, as well as Excel spreadsheets with the publicly released data, if you'd like to take a look at any of those. Julia, that is it, unless you have other questions from the board.
Are there any other questions from the board? Thank you for that presentation. I know there was a lot of work that was put into this, and I know how important all of this is, so thank you so much for that. Yes, go ahead.
So those of us on the curriculum committee saw this same presentation prior to tonight's board meeting, and first of all, I want to thank you both for entertaining all the questions that I posed within that curriculum committee meeting, but I also want to reflect publicly an appreciation for sort of the deep dive into what are very messy, complex data in your attempts to, present and analyze these as best as is humanly possible given the circumstances and dimensionality of such. So thank you for that.
Just the resources you have available, I think, are pretty outstanding. The Khan Academy, I just knowing through my daughters. In IXL, is that the one where you have to score 100 before you can move on to the next thing? Like you take the various tests? Yeah, I hear my kids screaming when they get something wrong. They dip back down into the 80s and they have to keep going back up. But I mean, the tools are there. I mean, the resources are there for parents and students to use at home, so those are good.
I just need to remind you that all of those tools cost money, and they're in my curriculum budget.
Anyone else? All right. So moving on to item D, the Equity and Social Justice Subcommittee action steps.
So that's me again. In the interest of making sure that we're all on the same page, I just want to explain that where we are with the Equity and Social Justice Advisory Committee. Last year, after the committee was up and running and we had several full committee meetings, we broke out and formed subcommittees to focus on specific areas. At the September meeting of the board, we presented a potential plan for how the work would go this upcoming school year. And one of the pieces of that was for the committees to go off and draft their action steps and come back and share them with all of you at the December meeting, which is what I'm doing tonight. The subcommittee action steps were drafted by members of the community, parents, teachers, administrators, and students who serve on those individual subcommittees. They met on November 4th. So for half the time, we did an activity together as a whole group, and then for the second half of the meeting, the committees met in subcommittees. The subcommittee chairs of each of the committees took the feedback from their committee and created draft action steps, which came to me. I put them into a single document. We shared them with the superintendent, and last week we had the opportunity to share them with the administrative council as well, and the administrative council was in support of these action steps moving forward. So I'm just going to take you through them. So the first committee is the Curriculum Audit Committee, and they have 3 steps that they want to work on over the upcoming school year. They want to review They want to review the survey data from teachers who wrote summer curriculum. So they created a survey last spring and sent it to teachers that did summer curriculum work. They still have data that remains to be analyzed from that process. They want to work on setting up a process for auditing curriculum using the U.S. history curricula in grades 5, 8, and 11 as a model. Related to this, we also believe that we need to increase community knowledge about how curriculum is written and implemented. So you know from some of the feedback that you've gotten that one of the concerns that has been raised is that these subcommittees are just making changes in the curriculum. And I just want to be clear again tonight that these committees are advisory. They make recommendations through the channels that exist for change in the district, either by making recommendations directly to the superintendent that might run through administrative council, or that come to a board committee, such as the curriculum committee or the communications committee. So, so we have some work to do there in terms of helping people understand just how curriculum is written and implemented. But we think, I will say that there's been a lot of activity across the state about thinking about curriculum audits, and it's just not that easy. There's a lot of curriculum. If you imagine preschool to grade 12, all of the different content areas, all of the individual courses, there's a lot of written curriculum. And as you know, our written curriculum is all available online for people to review. But we have a process for how things are changed, and the significant changes all roll through the curriculum committee. Next, step 2 looks simple, but I think that it's going to be a little bit more complex. And step 3 in that area is creating a bank of lessons and or practices for teachers to incorporate into the curriculum. Under parent, family, community outreach, this group is particularly heavy with parents and community members. One of the things they want to do is create more opportunities for families and students from different communities, different parts of our community, to interact socially and culturally, to share with and learn from one another, such as community events and community conversations. They have an interest in educating the community through a quarterly newsletter that publicizes and communicates our mission and highlights the diversity that exists within the Berlin community. And they're interested in developing partnerships with community organizations that can help educate residents and identify resources that can help promote our district mission. Under professional learning for educators and other members of the school staff, one of the things that should be familiar to you is that they see a great need to ensure that we move forward with the work around developing a district-wide equity statement to ground our collective work. They believe that the district-wide equity statement could help make decisions about which areas we want to focus on for professional learning and what the focus of those professional learning sessions should be. And as you know from our previous work, when we're looking at professional learning, we're not just talking about classroom teachers, but also learning that we might want to provide for people who serve in other roles, such as paraprofessionals. They also have data that they want to review and analyze from the survey that went out in June of 2021. And that survey asked our certified staff members to identify areas that they were interested in learning more about. But you can imagine with over 200 staff members responding and each answering several individual questions, there was a lot of data generated from that. They see a need to solidify future dates to offer professional learning. So that might be coming up this year. We have a professional development day in February, but also thinking about long-range planning, what might we offer and have availability to do in the summertime, or to plan ahead as we move into next fall so that we're ready to go. They have a desire to seek out internal and external presenters to facilitate professional learning, such as seeking out a keynote speaker to offer a positive unifying message to all staff. So for example, they put in the language of representation, connectedness, and celebration. That's part of the BHS Equity Initiative. And for us to continue to provide choice options related to equity and social justice on professional learning days. So I believe after the November professional development days, we sent out the list to you of offerings that were made available to teachers across the district. So typically on professional development days, we run a number of sessions, and we have some sessions that are required. So we might have a session, say, all the fifth grade math teachers need to go to this session. We have things that are optional, and they want to make sure that we have some choices related to this topic on the professional learning days. And to explore opportunities to engage this work on an ongoing basis, such as having equity leadership teams at each school. So they're thinking about ways to offer PD opportunities at the building level that might make it easier for some people to participate because it's right in their building, in both formal and informal ways. Some of the ideas that they had were related to equity, diversity, and inclusion breakfast, discussions at faculty meetings, and so on. Under recruitment and retention of a diverse workforce, one of the action steps that's proposed is to review the district website to ensure that it reflects the diversity of our school communities and to consider improvements that could attract potential applicants when choosing Berlin. They also have survey data where we ask specific questions about recruitment and retention, as well as their orientation to the district. And they want to spend some time investigating strategies that other school districts are using to attract and retain a diverse workforce, including the teacher residency program. And then finally, under school cultures and student opportunity, they have a broad goal of creating a community of learners who are empathetic, knowledgeable, and inclusive of diverse people and backgrounds. So they want to implement workshops, guest speakers, or programming that helps to diversify perspectives, recognizing and removing barriers that create inequitable opportunities for students. So one step in that is to take inventory of all of the opportunities that are offered across the district, including field trips and extracurricular activities, and to identify the structures in place that might prevent students from participating and look at what those barriers are to remove them. And then finally, to create school environments that celebrate and reflect all students and find ways for students to feel welcome, connected, and supported, and to empower students to influence the community by taking roles for positive action and change.
Any questions? I know that we have a motion and then we'll open it up for discussion, but any questions before the motion?
I have a question.
Yep.
Some of the wording is, so for instance, under parent, family, community outreach, and this is just number 2, educate the community through a quarterly newsletter that publicizes and communicates our mission. I don't love the term educate. I think it's a collaboration between community members and other entities. If you're doing a quarterly newsletter, who's the one that's educating? Some of the language is, there's another one in here about educating. I just think when it comes to the equity and social justice, who's responsible, or who that term educate is. You're really doing a collaboration and a discussion amongst different organizations, people, and offering insight. And so just for me, I don't.
All right, so Jamie, these are draft steps, so I just changed the language for step 2 to say provide the community with information through a quarterly newsletter. What was the other one that you? I don't know which other one you wanted to make a suggestion about.
Say that again, I'm sorry.
I don't know which other place you had a
I'm looking
suggestion.
for it right now. Number 3, develop partnerships with community organizations to help educate residents and identify resources that can promote our mission. So that one, number 2 and number 3, just under the parent, family, community outreach. Those are the only ones that it could just be me.
Just something that came to mind, you have survey from data from teachers, survey from staff, but if you have this column with parents, family, and community outreach, are there surveys to the parents and communities?
We have not yet surveyed parents of the community, and that was not an action step that that subcommittee proposed.
Melissa, can you just repeat that? I couldn't hear you. I'm sorry.
Oh, yeah, I was just looking at with the individual, the subcommittees. There's one in the curriculum audit where they had a survey with teachers, and then they had a survey and review for professional learning. So it's just looking at the, parent, family, community outreach as the whole thing is kind of the communication with there was surveys to the parent or the community.
So you think there should be a survey for parents?
I definitely think it should be, up to communicating.
So just to be clear, I'm taking that suggestion. I also just want to be clear, there were not 3 separate surveys, although the data is in 3 separate places. We did one staff survey that asked questions related to recruitment, orientation, and retention questions, and asked questions about professional learning needs. And there was a separate survey done for staff members who did summer curriculum work.
So
Julie, are you suggesting that we add an action step around surveying, or is that
I
something?
was asking Melissa if that's what she was suggesting.
Okay.
That's what I was going to ask you, Melissa. Is that what you were suggesting, or do you think it needs to be discussed more in our committee?
I mean, I think it could be discussed definitely more in the committee. Now, is the survey, I mean, it was with the staff, and now that you clarified that, like you said, there's multiple questions, but it just so happened that they're in different categories. Is this?
Because these subcommittees were already in place when we created the survey for staff, we organized the questions on the staff survey to align with information that we could feed back to the committees. So when we had a staff survey that was administered in June with multiple questions in several categories. So one whole category was around recruitment, retention, and orientation, and we asked a number of questions under that category. That information has gone back to the recruitment and retention committee.
Okay, so each subcommittee has seen the results
They've got
of
the
the
results
survey.
that are relevant to their committee.
Okay.
So I know for me right now, reading through this, and I've received it prior to, but as I'm reading through this, I have a number of questions myself, you know, just where certain things are going to go through for approval, because I know it's an advisory committee, and then some of the work's going to come through subcommittees on the board, as well as coming through the board or the superintendent. But I guess you know, I think this is a lot. I think a lot of work was put into this, which is great. I think we have a lot of clarity around this. I can typically read the table when people are very quiet and looking down. They're still taking it all in. So my suggestion to the board would be, can we take what was presented tonight, which was a lot, and kind of take it all in, and then put it on the agenda for our next meeting to come back to? Because I would hate for us to really rush and then come back, you know, tomorrow and have 20 different questions and saying, I wish I had asked that. If I just look at my notes, I have and some of them just might be answered after just thinking about it, and then others, what are your thoughts, Superintendent?
I just think the importance here is this was what the subcommittee decided the action steps would be within each subcommittee. So what Aaron did is pull them together and kind of try to get clarity on what the action steps would be, and then present them in front of you tonight. So when you look at these action steps, if the action steps aren't really meeting the board's need of where the subcommittee was going to go, I think we need to look at those action steps and then decide, okay, this is what we'd like this subcommittee to work on. This is the action step or action steps for the subcommittee, and then go through each one and decide what the board feels the action step should be. And if it's changing the wording or eliminating or adding to, I think that's fine, and then bringing it back to the committee.
And I truly want the board to be empowered to give input and make those suggestions so we can truly work together on this, and it's not, you know, the committee and then the board. It's, you know, mutual input.
But this is, just so that for greater clarity, it's not that these action steps were created via Aaron. They were created by the actual committee, by the subcommittee structure within that. And what we're doing is simply pulling them together and presenting to you for either approval or, to, as you said, to look at again and then decide what steps or what direction you want the various subcommittees to go.
We did discuss in September the process that things would go through the board and the subcommittees or the administrative council as appropriate.
I think it's very clear. I just want to put it out there to the board so the board members who feel empowered. But go ahead, Carrie.
I just have a question for, for a point of clarification and then a comment. My question is, just for the sake of clarifying this, those who comprise the subcommittee are not just members of the Berlin Public School community. They're members of our larger community, being parents and other residents of Berlin, correct? Okay.
Leads in each subcommittee.
Right.
Typically, and Aaron, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but typically are members of the school community, either administrators or teachers within the school that would
Understood.
lead each of the subs.
Right. So I think, you know, in that spirit, and I appreciate your comments, Jamie, about choosing words carefully, because I think they do convey things, but I think we do need to look at the intent of the action steps, right? Even as perhaps we're asking folks to wordsmith, and ask ourselves whether the intent actually captures what we were hoping this committee would, and that's what I would say, rather than wholly debate the words involved. Sorry.
And I'd just like to clarify that the Parent Community Outreach Committee is chaired by 2 parents with a school administrator.
Yes, thank you, yeah. Parents or community members are not involved in this, because it was very intentional, I think, in trying to capture.
Survey, and that's what, Melissa brought up. If there needs to be another survey that the board the board sees first and it goes out and the data is here, so be it, we could do that. It's just, I think it's important that the board's aligned with what the steps are.
Right.
So it's not just the subcommittee moving as a subcommittee, but the board is backing, and that's why it's here this evening for your approval.
Can I ask a question? And if I can ask it to Melissa, we can't hear down here like at all. So when you were talking, we were just kind of trying to figure it out. Am I under the impression, and it's no big deal, would you feel that this parent family community outreach, do you think it would be important to have a survey like Mr. Benigni just said, to go out to parents? Or are you comfortable or think it's okay that we have and I'm not trying to single you out, we were just trying to hear. Sorry, no offense, we couldn't hear anything down here.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I definitely think that would be important. I mean, one of the things, not taking away the word like educate, but, speaking about the community as a whole, it's not just the, parents of the students that are, in the schools, it's also the community itself and everyone else. Did that?
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
It's just the beginning, we couldn't hear, and it had nothing to do with you. It's just the way, we wish it was like a U so we could actually hear and see. Okay.
We can entertain a motion, or we could table this and come back to it at our next meeting. I don't know what your thoughts are around that. I don't want to have to make a decision for you guys, but.
When do they meet again, Erin?
We don't have a next meeting date set.
Okay.
For the full committee.
Okay.
But I can tell you the people that have been working on this since last January are anxious to move forward.
Absolutely. How many members are there?
Over 40.
Okay.
And it's an open committee. People are welcome to join us.
Gotcha.
So we can go ahead and table this unless someone wants to make a motion and move forward with it tonight. However, retreat coming up, we can also add an additional meeting for a workshop, because we do hold that second meeting of the month when we moved from 2 meetings to 1. I think I just want to make sure everyone takes time so they can look, to Carrie's point, at the intent of the action step. So if you oppose that, you can go ahead and make a motion for consideration. Otherwise, I will table it till the next meeting.
So I don't know if it's appropriate for me to make another comment, but.
What?
I don't know if it's appropriate or not.
Go
for me to
ahead,
make another
please.
comment. So I guess what I am feeling is that this committee has been, an open committee and folks were invited from the community, and they've been working on this for nearly a year. And now this is coming to us, and they're just asking us to approve next action steps. And we're not trusting that they've done, I feel as though we're not trusting that they've done the work that they need to do in order to move forward. So I don't see what in these next action steps are so, I guess that's my challenge. So I'm trying to figure out what the objection is to allowing the next steps.
I just want to give people time to digest it and take it in and think about it and ask the questions they need to if they want to, because it has been just such a bigger topic within our community. I would really hate for the board and me to lead the board in a direction where people are jumping to make a motion because that's where we're all going and just moving forward. I wanted to be mindful and thoughtful to respect the committee, but also make sure people have their time to process and ask questions. And that's just really a mutually respectful action here, so we can be thoughtful around it. And that's my only intent on suggesting that. You know, I think also when Jamie brought up her point, that made me think that, you know, if she has that initially, then maybe there's some other things that will arise. You know, and I just want to make sure that we are being thoughtful, and if we're not in a rush, if the date hasn't been set, I don't think it needs to be viewed as we don't trust that people are doing their work, or, you know, this isn't good enough, but I just want to give everyone the space that they need, because it has been such a big topic. Do you have something, Matt?
I do. I appreciate all the work that's gone into this so far. It's obviously a long time, and people have done a lot of work on it. But my position for this evening is this, is since I didn't receive this until 1:20 this afternoon, I haven't had a chance to really look it all the way through. So I feel that I would be remiss if I voted to accept this without really looking through it and moving it forward. That's my only issue, is I haven't had a chance to look at it yet. So Carrie, I understand what you're saying, and I agree, is these are the recommendations of the subcommittees, but I haven't had a chance, and now you're asking me to vote on something. So had there been a motion, I would have abstained from this vote at this point.
Anyone else want to add their thoughts? By all means. All right, so if anyone would like to make a motion, I will entertain a motion for consideration. If not, we can table it till our next meeting. Dr. Mcgurk, I want to thank you for presenting all this and putting it all together. You know, I know it is a lot of work, and I know that the people who are, you know, working on this are putting a lot of work into it, and, you know, really just the essence of the thoughtfulness that was put into creating this is being, you know, looked at the same way on the board.
Can I just ask a question? How many people, including admin and stuff, are on the entire group itself?
There are more than 40 people in the entire group, and 37 people were at the last meeting that worked on these action steps.
Okay.
Julia?
Yes.
Since we're not going to take action, then I guess I will move to table this item to our next meeting.
Second.
So motion by Tim, second by Adam. Any discussion?
Not a discussionable item.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Any abstentions? All right, 9-0. In the last item, we have transportation contracts. It's anticipated that a recommendation will be made from the F&O committee, but we do have to go into executive session. Inviting the superintendent.
Myself, Ashley Dorsey, financial.
Mr. Cugno. Okay, so.
All right, so I will move to go into executive session to discuss a finance matter or contractual matter. Inviting Ashley Dorsey, Jeff Cugno, and Superintendent Benigni.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? 9-0. So we will head on over to the upbeat room, and then we will come back to close out the meeting. So if you would like to stay for us to close it out, we will come back as soon as we are done. right, so it's 8:48, and we have finished up executive session. Do we have a motion for consideration?
I will move to extend the contract with the New Britain Transportation Company through June 30th, 2027 as negotiated.
Do we have a second? So motion by Carrie, second by Matt. Any discussion?
Thank you for your continued service to the town.
Thank you. Yes, go ahead.
I just want to recognize you, publicly, Peter, that listening to other superintendents the last year and a half and some of the dealings that they had, we really appreciate what you've done for the schools and keeping us whole and getting our students where we need to be for all events. As I shared with the board, you didn't let us down once, so thank you very much. We really do appreciate it.
The students were not so happy.
They like when you drive, Peter. They like when you drive.
I might have passed you.
Well, we appreciate your commitment.
Yes, thank you so much. Anything else? All right. All those in favor? Aye. Aye. Opposed? 9-0. Right.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion by Adam, second by Carrie. All those in favor? 9-0. It is 8:49. Have a wonderful night. Thank you, everyone.